My mouth was starting to stretch, my body coming to a compulsion to close it, but physically I couldn't. I was stuck for the moment, then slowly closing my mouth, my hand covering, hoping to mask my yawn while I sat at my desk. Finally, the yawn completed itself, and as I looked around, I could see more and more eyes looking at me, probably judging me.
I know, Nick, some of this paperwork isn't the most flashy. Definitely not at 8 a.m., but it's important you all know these types of forms if you wish to work at the FBI. Now let's look at Form 808.7. This relates to criminals stealing from anyone over the age of 60, specifically targeting into their investment portfolios, like their 401k or Roth IRA. If you don't know what those are yet, figure that out first and put some money in. Not our agency advice, but good future advice. Take it. If you look, pages 440 to 490 covers these types of forms and the way these criminals try to commit these types of crimes. You all have the next 3 hours to read this section and take your test. After, we will grab lunch and allow you all to witness most of yours first autopsy. Sounds good?
The instructor went on, me already holding the thick sheets of paper in the textbook he wanted us to read. This sucks, I said to myself, probably rolling my eyes as I went to the very first page, remembering yesterday and knowing I had one more full day of training left before I could go home. All of this was my idea to begin with myself asking Dip a way to become an officer with the FBI and getting recommended the process and procedures held by the FBI in their California office. I looked around, nearly the entire class staring deep into the textbooks, all the students being around the office and currently deployed at local stations. To make it better, there were 2 students from the Livingston office, one named Greg, who was about 3 years older than me and had an interesting collection of tattoos of Greek gods on his shoulder sleeve. The other officer's name was Becca, a new girl in the department, 1 year younger than me.
You know, Nick, Dip spoke very highly of your abilities last time I spoke with him. I'm hoping you can show me those abilities today.
The professor stated, some chuckles from in front and behind me of other students, with even more judging eyes. Of course, I said to him, which the professor nodded, then adjusting the wire glasses that laid on the crest of his nose, moving to the side of the room where someone had their hand raised. When a criminal sends fraudulent messages to someone in a senior center, requesting access and provisions to their accounts, this can be an example of fraud. I continued to read from my textbook, my mind wandering to what could be at home.
Have you ever had a beer before?
Colin asked Will, who was holding the can up and examining the proud American flag. Then twisting it around, seeing the hockey field with small players chasing after a puck, the words, "Get pucked," in bold gold letters above.
What's hockey?
Will asked, poking at the top of the can, trying to figure out the way to open it.
Pull on that little tag, you see it?
Colin responded, giving Will a couple of seconds to try to figure it out on his own, then reaching out and grabbing it, popping it open, which spooked Will as the final hiss settled inside, and handed it back to him.
Hockey is a game played on ice. It's like soccer. You have a puck and sticks, and there's 2 goals. Each team has 6 players on the ice at a time, and sometimes there fights 2. Also, you get the pun from the can. Get pucked?
Colin explained, waiting for Will's response.
Yeah, I get the joke. They play with a puck and replace the P with an F in pucked, and you get something else.
Then putting the can to his mouth and taking a sip, the alcohol flowing down his throat and into his stomach, a gagging reflex after came from him. Will continued to gas, then trying to swallow the rest of his drink as Colin commentated.
So I guess that was your first beer. You will be okay. You'll get used to it, definitely, after this weekend. Also, you don't have to finish it. When we go camping, we will bring more than just beer. You can have vodka mixed with juice. That's what the girls are bringing. You know, like orange juice, the stuff Nick gets.
Will nodded his head, understanding and setting the barely drank can on the table.
When are we leaving to go camping?
He then asked, Colin giving a quick reply.
When Nick gets back is when we will leave. He should leave midday from his training tomorrow, so I can assume we need to be ready at 5. then get to the actual campsite at 7. Don't worry, Drake. Our roommate has already made our tents when we arrive. That's why he and the 3 others left today.
Will nodded his head. Colin following up his statement with a question to fill time.
So you lived with Nick's uncle and aunt in Montana. That must have been fun up there. See a lot of the mountains and snow.
Will reluctantly nodded his head, trying to remember every detail of his life that Nick had said to him for a story on his life.
Yeah, and I went to college there too. I did business. Then I got kicked out and Nick invited me here.
Will went, doing his best to cover up his story to allow Colin no more questions.
So what college did you go to? For myself, I got to Oregon State, studying engineering. Nerdy, somewhat important stuff.
He continued asking Will, who responded,
Whitefish College. Got a 2-year degree, now I'm here.
hastily wishing for the conversation to end.
So what do they call a 2-year degree? When I complete mine, I will have a master's. What's the term for yours?
Colin replied, testing Will.
They just called it a 2-year degree. I didn't get a fancy name for it.
Will replied, now standing up and making his way to the stairs leading up. Colin spoke before he could hit the first step.
You can be open with me, Will. You seem like a good person, a little off, but a good person. I don't want you to feel you need to feed me a BS story of your life for me to like you.
Then watched as Will raced up the stairs and disappearing.
The human mind is the most fascinating part of the human body. Over 85 billion individual cells make up your brain and produces enough electricity that it can run a low-voltage light bulb. Here, we can see the brain in its full extracted state. The lines covering the brain are called gyri and sulci, and are engineered to allow more mass into the skull. Now we can move on to our patient's mid-region. Let's examine the heart now.
The professor went, still wearing his sweater from earlier, protected by a plastic sheet draped over him as he set the brain down. The autopsy presentation went on for another hour, ending at the toes, which the professor explained helped humans obtain balance. The next day went by more or less than our first 2, with a long study session in the first half of the day, and then being able to leave instead of doing a lab led by the professor. By 1 p.m., we were on the road, racing to get back home for the start of our camping trip. Hours passed before I eventually made it home, then getting the car packed quickly and starting another 2-hour drive to Elwood Campsite up in the mountains. It was already 7 when we arrived there, myself, Colin, and Will hoping out of the car, seeing Drake and his 3 friends, Quinn, Alyssa, and Ellie, already drinking around the campfire, leaving a pile of cans to the side. We joined them in the circle, myself opening a beer and turning on the radio which played in the background, going to a station filled of classical Western music.
So we get up the hill, and above the hill, we can see a giant valley. Well, in the valley are cows, breaking down the fence with a leader right in the middle of the highway. Then we approach down the hill, not sure of what to do, and eventually just honk the horn at the one in the lane. I think we spook it, at least enough that it moved out the way, but then we saw one coming from our side. So Ellie yells, "Move," in my ear, and I hit the gas hard, tires going, and I think we hit 60 miles an hour in under 5 seconds, just blasting and leaving the cows in the dust.
Drake explaining his story of the trip to the location the day before.
You should have killed one. Bring the meat here and we could have had burgers next to a fire.
Colin then joked, the group laughing with him, then being interrupted by a break in the music. I glanced over at the radio, seeing the green power button flash showing power as a man on the line said,
Streaks of light are being reported in the area. Scientists are saying this is a uncommon aurora light show caused by atmospheric gases colliding with solar winds coming from the south.
I looked up, making a comment to the group. I see a bunch of little stars and a half-lit moon, patiently staring at the sky, waiting for anything to happen.
There it is. I see it. I see it.
Alyssa now exclaimed to the group, pointing up. I followed her finger, more stars to where she had pointed at.
See what?
Colin asked with a confused tone, shared by the rest of the group.
It's the Big Dipper, constellations, big images in the sky. If you draw a line between that star to that star and connect all of them, you get like a big pot or a hat. It's a trucker's hat.
she exclaimed, now laughing at her own joke.
We might want to cut her off. Let her rest for the night.
Drake then said, staring over at her. Suddenly, Alyssa's face lit up, with the surroundings beside her, and everything became fully lit. I moved back in my seat, my mind confused on what had happened, looking at everyone in the group looking around, confused as if the sky was turned on for a second by light switch, then suddenly flipped back off.
Was it just me, or could you guys see everything like it was daytime?
Quinn said.
It wasn't just you.
Ellie confirmed, a slight fear in her eyes for what had just happened. We looked at the radio, seeing if there would be any updated for what could explain what just happened. Suddenly the lights turned on again, myself seeing the radio clear as day, even reading the word Workman logo on it. I then looked up, the light of daylight fading and a streak of light now being focused. I pointed, alerting everyone to the shooting star-like object, now making its descent on Earth. I continued to follow it with my fingers, tracking as it nosedived to the Earth, a shake of the ground we stood on which knocked a log in the fire down, ensuring that it made contact with the Earth. The loudest boom I had ever heard in my life, confirming that.
You guys want to go check it out?
Drake asked the group, a bunch of drunk but eager faces agreeing with him. Drake stood up, followed by everyone else as he rushed into the woods, carrying a flashlight and hoping to find a space treasure.
Great. Just a bunch of drunk kids running into the woods. What could go wrong?
Will then said, following his brother. The campsite behind them came out of picture, with the group of 7 now single-filed in the woods. We searched for nearly 10 minutes, myself leading us through the brush and openings left by trees, eventually seeing a small fire in a small patch of grass. We jogged over to it, myself and Collins subtracting the oxygen that gave life to the fire and the iridescent glow of the flashlights exposing the cause. There laid 3 stones, much like the shape of a rugged football with green glow vein like bulges wrapping around each stone. I picked one up, examining it, the stone being black, much blacker than any stone in the area, myself feeling it could only be from space.
What are these things?
Quinn asked.
Asteroids, or at least pieces of it. That's what the rock is, but I don't know why it's green and glowing.
Drake responded.
Could be bacteria.
Ellie said.
Well, that would mean alien life.
Drake replied, fully grasping what it could mean by the object he was holding.
Today is such a strange but exciting day. Today is such a strange but exciting day.
I bet I have a stranger story.
Will then bubbled out of his mouth, then going over to a bush and puking. I rushed over to him, bending down beside and whispering, "You can't tell your strange story, okay? No one wants to hear it." Then grabbing and standing him up straight again, helping him walk. "We should get back to camp, collect all of the samples, and then we can go to the lab tomorrow and figure out what this is." Everyone nodded in agreement, and Colin and Drake picked up the remaining stones, using their t-shirts as a makeshift backpack to carry them. I waited for Will, who tried to get in line, walking 10 feet before turning away and puking into another bush while on the ground. We waited ahead of him by 30 feet, hearing him hurling and myself calling, "Let's try to hurry it up, buddy." A minute passed before he returned, making his way back with us to camp. A feeling of anxiety was over the camp when we got back, mostly because of the possibility that alien life could exist in those stones, which would only be the second craziest things that has happened to me in the course of the year. We went to bed at nearly 4 a.m., myself and Will sleeping together with the stones in Drake and Colin's bed. An hour later, another flash came by, this time persistent and seemed to directly go into our eyes. I looked out the tent, the light shining and beaming in, with a couple yells outside. Then a scream from one of the girls, and I unzipped the tent, exposing myself to the 20 people outside, wearing hazmat suits next to military-grade vehicles with floodlights pointed against us. I looked over to Drake and Colin's tent, 2 men coming out, each carrying a stone in hand. I watched as they walked over to a man in a suit, holding a large case which seemed to be padded, the stones being dropped in.
ID.
A man then said beside me, reaching out his hand in a white glove. I reached back into the tent, grabbing my stuff and pulling my wallet out, handing him the ID, then saying, I am with the Livingston Department. He looked at it, then handing it back to me, asking Will.
ID.
Will didn't speak, unsure of what to say, allowing me to butt in. He doesn't have it. He lost it while at a bar and is having one be sent to him. The man then got distracted, Ellie and Alyssa arguing with one of the officers. I watched as they handed him their IDs, complying.
You all can go back to bed. Act like we were never here, and please don't discuss these stones. It's very possible these are foreign objects and could be extremely dangerous if word got out in the community.
The man in the suit said, now getting in the passenger side of the military vehicle and driving off. The camp cleared within the next minute, and just like that, it felt like we were once again alone in the woods. Not a single light showing anything. We arrived home the next day, me and Will going upstairs to unpack everything. He was across the room, sitting upright on his futon we had bought of him as a bed, sifting through his belongings. He then set his bag down on the floor. A clank sound's going off, and I looked over at him. You dropped something? I asked.
No.
He responded, rummaging through his bag, a faint green light coming through the fabric on the bag. Do you have one of the stones? I asked him, himself looking up in confusion, replying.
If I found one, it's mine. It's a souvenir.
Then pulling out the radio from his bag, the light shining on it showing it was on, the soft music coming to my ears. I chuckled, saying, I forgot I gave you that. Now looking down, presumably allowing Will to drop the stone into a shoebox and slide it in under his bed.